Alrighty, what are we doing over here? What? Where are we? What? Alright, what am I mean to tell you? Where are we? Oh? Alright. How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chafei, Daf 25 of Masechta Kiddushin. Friends, listen up. Here's the deal. Daf 25, I don't think it's so hard. It's a little awkward, but it's not so hard. I should ask my friend. I should tell my friend about this stuff. Maybe she'd like it. But Akoponim. So basically talks about castration. All right, we're going to start on Daf Chafei Amud Aleph. So says the Gemara on Daf Chafei Amud Aleph, 2 lines into the page. Savid Nizonia. So the elders of Nizonia, also the Firkei of Chizda, they didn't come to the Beis HaMedrash, to Rav Chizda, to his shir. Amalei the Rav Amnuna. So Rav Chizda says to Rav Amnuna, Ziltz no inu. Go in. It's like a step down from excommunication, right? Excommunication is pretty severe, but if you're, these were rabbis of Chizda, didn't want to excommunicate them. Basically, what does Rashi say? He says, "Emor aleim lehisager v'leishav abayis." Stay at home, house arrest. Right? Okay, it's kilu. He was not approving that they ditched the shir. Ozal Amar Lahu. So Rav Amnuna went and he says to these Savei Dinizonia, "My time lo asu rabbanon lefirka. How come you didn't come to the shir?" Amrulay. So they responded to Rav Amnuna, "Amai nesu. Why should we come to the shir? Diba'inun minei milsa v'lei pashalon. We asked him epis, and he didn't give us an answer. So why should we waste our time?" Amrulu. So Rav Amnuna says to them, "Mi ba'isu minoi midi v'lo pashid nelechu." Well, have you asked me anything and I didn't give you an answer? Ask me. So Bominis, they said, fine. Here's our question. Evet sheser sorabu bebeitzim mau. Here's our question. An Eved Kanaini that is Adon cut off his testicles. What's the halacha? Does he go free or not? Kimum shebegoli domi? Is it considered a revealed mum? Since you can, if you're looking at the scrotums, you could see the testicles inside Darton, so maybe that's considered revealed. Although, or maybe since it's inside the scrotum, they're kind of not revealed. So that's the shaila. Sulava biyade, and Rav Amnuna didn't know. Amrlo. So they said to Rav Amnuna, you see, now you're also wasting our time. Ma shimcha, what's your name? Amrlo Amnuna. He says, my name is Amnuna. Amrulay, lav Amnuna, ela karnuna. Loser. So they made fun of him. And they said, Hamnuna, more like Karnuna. Like, we say at the end of Masechta when we make a siyum, not like Miyoshve Kronis. You're a Yoshev Kronis. Scram skedaddle. Also the comment of Chizda. So now Rav Amnuna goes to Rav Chizda, Amalei. And Rav Chizda says, that? Masnisa bo minoch. They asked you about a brisa. The Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah, that there are 24 sort of like limb endings in a person. Kulam ein mitamin, I guess ba'adam in a fellow. Kulam ein mitamin mishum michya. Now when it comes to tsaras, they would not be tummy, right? Because it says, what does it say by tsaras? Does it say something? It says umichas basachai baseis. It says l'chol mari eini akoid. That the kohen needs to see the entire blemish. Now, if you have a tsaras on like your fingertip, so you can't see all of it at once, because if you look, parts of it are going to be on like different slopes of the finger if it's at the tip. So therefore, you can't see the entire blemish in one sighting. You have to like look on different sides, and when you look on one side, you can't see on the other side, etc. So therefore, it would not be tamei. It would not be tamei. Ve'eluhem roshi ve'eluhem. These are the 24 limb endings. Roshei etzbos yodayim v'raglayim. Well, the fingertips of your fingers and your toes. So that's 20 out of the 24 right there. V'roshei oznaim, your ears. V'rosh Echotim, the nose. V'rosh Agvia, and the penis. 24. V'rosh Dadim should be Isha, and for a woman, so I guess the penis isn't one of them, but breasts. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Af Shaboish, and Rabbi Yehuda says, even with the fellow, his chest. V'tani Allah, and we taught about it. B'chulam, Eved Otziborim L'cherus, that on any of these things, if they get popped off, so then the Eved would go free. Rabbi Omer, now says Rabbi, Af Haserus, even a castrato. Benazai Omer, and says Benazai, Af Haloshin. Benazai says even if he cuts out the tongue, the Eved would go free. Omar Mar, we said earlier, we just said, Rabbi Omer Af Haserus, and Rabbi says even a castrato. Serus Demai. When we're talking about a castrato, what exactly got cut off? Ilem Serus the gid. If you're going to say it's the penis, not the testicles, so Hainu Gvir, we already said that. The Tanakama already mentioned that. So Elalab, Serus debates him, it must be that the testicles got castrated. Period. So basically, the question of the Saveh Dinizonia is a machlekes. The Tanakama says that he would not go free, and the Rebbe says he would go free. That's the answer. It's a machlekes. Now, Rebbe Omer Af Haserus, Rebbe had said that even a castrato would go free. Rebbe Loshin Lo, but not the tongue, because Ben Azai mentioned the tongue. Right, Rebbe, right, meaning we mentioned 24 things, and then Rebbe adds castrato, and then Ben Azai adds the tongue, implying that Rebbe excludes the tongue. We have a contradiction. Or if you had a fellow who's being sprinkled with the mei chatas, with the water of the para aduma, with the ashes of the para aduma inside of it. So if you have a fellow, he was getting sprinkled with the mei chatas, v'nitza azo al piv, and he got sprinkled on his mouth. Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says Rebbe says that it's a sprinkle. It's a valid sprinkle. Lo hiza, and the Chacham say that it's an invalid. It doesn't count as a sprinkle. My lab, alishonu, and let's say that when it talks about the mouth, it means the tongue. That the sprinkle hit the tongue, and Rebbe is saying that the tongue would be a valid sprinkle. Now you have to sprinkle on a revealed part of the body, and the Gemara is going to explain in a little bit what the machlokas is exactly. But anyways, Rebbe is saying if it lands on the tongue, it's considered a sprinkle. So here also, if the tongue gets cut out, it should be considered a missing limb that the Eved should go free. Lo al svosov. No, it's not talking about the tongue. It's talking about if it gets on the fellow's lips. Al svosov pshita. What do you mean? If it got on the lips, of course it's a sprinkle. Why wouldn't it be a sprinkle? It hit the guy on his lips. So ma'od detema. Well, I may have thought zimnin dechalim svosei. I may have thought that, well, sometimes you can hide your lips, right? You can zip your lips, seal them really tight to the extent that they're like hidden. And therefore, maybe it wouldn't be considered a valid sprinkle because your lips aren't always visible, aren't always exposed, necessarily. Kamaj Malon. So what Rebbe is teaching us is that even if it hits the lips, still it's a sprinkle. But one second, you're seriously telling me that it's talking about the lips? It's not talking about the lips. It's talking about the tongue. But we learn in a brisa, al lishono. Explicitly it says, if he sprinkles on the tongue, ve'od, and more so, Tani, we learn in a brisa, v'shanita rov aloshin, that when it comes to a bechor, it's considered a mum if most of the tongue is missing. So we see that the tongue is considered, significant if it's missing. So Rebbe Omer, rov medabisha bilshono, and Rebbe, what's the word I'm thinking of? I don't know. But Rebbe, is on board with that, and he says that when we mention the tongue, we're saying the majority of the part of the tongue that is like wiggly. Part of your tongue is like connected to your mouth, and part of your tongue is free to wiggle around. So part of the wiggle around part of the tongue. So we see that according to Rebbe, the tongue is significant. So Ella Rebbe, so 1 second. So what happens? We had this Mishnah. The Mishnah says that there are 24 different limbs that the Eved Kanani can go free from. Rebbe adds castration. Ben Azai adds the tongue, implying that Rebbe doesn't hold of the tongue. So no, Ella Rebbe Omer Seirus V'lo Mibaya Lashon. So rather, no, Rebbe is talking about castration. If the fellow gets castrated by his Zaldan, so he goes free. And certainly, if his tongue gets cut out, he would also go free. Ben Azai Omer says, Ben Azai Lashon, Avol Seirus Lo. Ben Azai says, only if his tongue is cut off does he go free, but not if his testicles are cut off. Umay Af. So when Ben Azai says even the tongue, it's not in addition to Rebbe who says the testicles, but it's in addition to the Tanakama who says the 24 limbs. All right, but the testicles Ben Azai would not be on board with. If that's the case, if that's the case, then shouldn't we list Ben Azai before Rebbe? Meaning, wouldn't it make sense that it should be the Tanakama lists 24 things? Ben Azai adds to that the tongue, and Rebbe adds to that castration. So, and for the Gemara, again, I feel like we've seen a few of these things recently, or maybe I'm just excited about this recently. But Tana Shama Rebbe Vikava. Look, the Tana who taught this, these teachings, he first heard of Rebbe, so he mentioned Rebbe first. Vishama Ben Azai Vitani, and then later on he heard that Ben Azai says the tongue, and he added that. But he didn't change the order of anything, right? Meaning, you have this Mishnah. The Mishnah lists all these different 24 things. Then the Aratana heard of Rebbe's opinion, which says even Seiris. So now he added that, and then people were starting to learning it with the Mishnah and Rebbe's opinion, and they were memorizing it. And then he heard about Ben Azai. So he added that on. You didn't want to start changing around the order once people are already memorizing, and then you have machlokes. Some people know it this way, some people know it that way. So he just kind of appended things as they came so as not to mess with the already accepted traditions that we had, because, of course it was Baal Peh, it was memorized, and he didn't want to kind of mess with that. But the truth of the matter is that, the Tanakama says these 24 things. Ben Azai adds to that the tongue. Rebbe adds to that the testicles. Okay. Omar Ula says Ula. Hakol modim biloshin le'inyon tuma digolihu. Everybody agrees that when it comes to tumah, if you have a dead sheretz that falls on a fellow and he becomes tummy, even if it falls on his tongue, he would become tummy. If a dead sheretz falls on the tongue, right? Digolihu eitzel sheretz. My time, how come? Asher yigabo. Because the pasuk says that if a so it looks like this pasuk is in the context of a zav, but I guess it's the same concept, that anything that he will touch, and the tongue is touchable. So the inyan tvila ketamundami, and everyone agrees that when it comes to going to the mikvah, your tongue is considered a hidden part of the body. You don't need to open up your mouth in order to, when you're in the mikvah, right? The mikvah is about touching the outer parts of your body. It doesn't need to get inside of your whole body. You don't need to open your mouth when you're in the mikvah. So in terms of going to the mikvah, it's considered hidden, and it's, you don't need to tovel your tongue. My time, because the Torah says that you wash your flesh in the water. So just like your flesh is, outward facing. So those are the things I need to go to the mikvah. You don't need to open your mouth when you're in the mikvah. Fine. So everyone agrees that when it comes to tumah sheretz, if it falls on your tongue, tameh, everyone agrees that when you go to the mikvah, you don't need to open your mouth. Lo nechliku ella le'inyan azah. The machlokas between Rebbe and the Chachamim is with regard to sprinkling the mei chatas. Rebbe medamid lo the tumah. Rebbe compares the tongue to the tumas sheretz, right? Just like by tumas sheretz, it would be tummy. So also by the sprinkling of the mechatas, it would be, right? So it would also be relevant, and you would be tahor if you sprinkle on the tongue. Whereas the rabbis compare it to tvila, right? Just like when going to the mikvah, your tongue is irrelevant. You don't have to open your mouth. So also when it comes to sprinkling the mechatas, your tongue is irrelevant. If it lands on the tongue, it doesn't make a difference. And both Rebbe and the Rabbanon are arguing about the same pasuk. They just are learning from different parts of the same pasuk. V'hiza ator al hatame v'gomer. That the pasuk says that the Torah fellow will sprinkle on the Tamei fellow. Rebbe Sovar, Rebbe holds v'hiza ator al hatame bayom ashlishi vayom ashvi v'chito. That he's sprinkling on the tummy, right? That we compare it to tumah, and just like we said, tumah shasheretz, he would be tummy if it touches the tongue. So also the sprinkling of the mechatos is effective when it touches your tongue. Rabbanan savrei v'chito bayom hashvi v'chibes begada v'rochatz b'moyim. And the rabbis, however, compare the sprinkling of the mechatos to v'rochatz hamoyim, to going to the mikvah. And just like going to the mikvah, the tongue is irrelevant. So also by sprinkling of the mechatos, the tongue is irrelevant. Why don't the rabbis though hold like Rebbe and compare it to tumah and say that the tongue is relevant to sprinkling of the mechatos? So Tyra mitayra havale lemelaf. Well, because they prefer to learn out purification from purification, right? The point of sprinkling the mechatos is to purify a fellow. The point of going to the mikvah is to purify a fellow. So therefore, it makes sense to learn out purity from purity. And just like when you go to the mikvah, that your tongue is irrelevant. So also when it comes to sprinkling the mechatos, the tongue is irrelevant. Now, why doesn't Rebbe hold like the Rabbanon and compare the sprinkling to going to the mikvah? Because the problem with the Rabbanon's approach, according to Rebbe, is that the pasuk says, what does the pasuk say? And only then v'rachatz b'mayim. Right there, this v'chibes begadav kind of gets in the way and messes it up for the rabbis. Rebbe argues, and therefore you can't, kind of breaks up the ability to compare the sprinkling to the mikvah, and therefore the sprinkling is being compared to the tumah, which is relevant by the tongue. Now we had said that with regard to going to the mikvah, everyone agrees that the tongue is irrelevant. You don't need to open up your mouth when you're in the mikvah. But is that really true? Does Rebbe really agree with that? V'amar Ravin, Amar Vada, Amar Rabbi Yitzchok, Ma'aseh b'shivcha shel beis Rebbe. There was a ma'aseh with a maidservant in the household of Rebbe. Shetovlo, she went to the mikvah, also she came out of the mikvah. V'nimtza etzem bein shinel, and it turned out that there was a bone in her teeth. V'etzricha Rebbe tefillah acheres, and Rebbe required her to go to the mikvah again. Now, if Rebbe agrees that anything inside of your mouth does not need to be, tovel, you don't have to open your mouth in the mikvah, so who cares if there's anything in her teeth? So chevre, listen to what the Gemara answers. It's not so radical. But let's go weiter for a second. Granted that you don't need to open up your mouth in the mikvah, but makom ha'ra'ui lavo bo mayim ba'inon. But you do need that. In theory, the water could get there, and this is why I'm excited about this. I was trying to remember this phrase the other day. Remember? Remember, I was trying to remember this phrase the other day. So it's like Reb Zera says, by a korban mincha. A mincha does not need to be mixed together. You don't have to mix together the flour. If you don't mix together the flour, it's fine. But if you put too much flour in the bowl so that you can't mix it together, even if you wanted to, so that's a problem. So even though you don't have to mix the korban mincha together, but you at least have to be able to mix the korban mincha together. As long as you're able to mix it together, then we don't care whether you do or don't. But if you're unable to mix it together, then it's a problem. It has to be at least able to be mixed together. So here also, you don't need to open up your mouth in the mikveh. You don't technically need to purify your mouth in the mikveh. But you do need it to be, able to be purified in the mikveh, right? Don't go to the mikveh with stuff in your teeth because, I don't need to open my mouth anyways in the mikveh. No, you go to the mikveh with, brush your teeth, have a clean mouth, so that, yes, even though you don't need to open your mouth in the mikveh, but at least, theoretically, if water, if water did get into your mouth, it would at least have the ability to purify your mouth. Okay, so now, Kitanoi. Let's say that this machlokes about whether castration of the testicles is a mum or not, let's say it's machlokes tanoim, umouch v'chosus, crushed and squashed, v'nosuk v'charus, and cut and torn, severed and torn. Kulan bebeitzim, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that those are talking about the testicles. They're not talking about the gid. All right. Okay. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Where am I? Divrei Rabbi Yehuda bebeitzim velo begid. One second. We're talking about specifically the testicles and not the gid. So ela kulan af bebeitzim. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says even the testicles. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer kulam begid. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says no, they're not talking about all of them are talking about the gid, not the beitzim. Rabbi Yossi Omer moch v'chosus af bebeitzim nosuk v'chorus begid in bebeitzim lo. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda makes a pshara, makes a compromise. He says crushed and squashed is talking about the beitzim, but severed and what was the other one? Severed and I don't remember anymore. Severed and something else. Begid in bebeitzim lo. Yeah, right. Let me tell you. I forgot what it was. Severed and I don't remember. And now we get to a new Mishnah. Behema gasa nicknames b'mesira v'adaka b'agba divrei Meir v'Eliezer v'chomam behema daka nicknames b'meshicha. What's the difference between mesira and meshicha? Mesira, transferring, versus meshicha, pulling, drawing, are basically the opposites, right? If Shimon is selling an animal to Reuven, so mesira means that Shimon, passes, transfers the animal to Reuven. Meshicha would be if Reuven pulls the animal to him. So behema gasa, when it comes to behema gasa, like a cow, nicknames b'mesira, is acquired through mesira. That if Shimon is selling his cow to Reuven, he would transfer, he would pull it by the hair or something and he transfer it to Reuven. Ve'adaka, and if he's selling like a sheep, be'agboya, Reuven would come and he would pick it up. Divrei Meir v'Rabbi Eliezer. V'chacham omrim, whereas the chacham say behema daka nicknames b'meshicha, whereas the chacham say that a behema daka is acquired to meshicha, that Reuven would pull it. Okay. Toresh Rav b'kimchonya behema gasa nicknames b'meshicha. That Rav darshan in kimchonya that a behema gasa is acquired to meshicha through pulling it, not like the Mishnah says that it's through transferring it. Ashkochinu Shmuel the Talmidei de Rav. So Shmuel found the students of Rav. Amrlu, when he said to them, Mi Amar Rav behema gasa nicknames b'meshicha. Did Rav really say that a behema gasa can be acquired by pulling it, by drawing it? Ve'anan b'mesira tanan. But our Mishnah says it's by transferring, by the owner transferring it. V'Rav nami b'mesira Omar. And Rav also said that it was by transferring, not by drawing. So Hadar Bey Me'ahi, has Rav gone back from what he himself said, that it's by transferring, not by pulling? So Huda Amar Ki Atana, Rav was saying like the following Tana, the Tana is we learn in the Brisa. The Chacham say Zo Vazo nicknames b'meshicha, that both a behema gasa and a behema daka are acquired b'meshicha by pulling it. Reb Shimon Omer says Reb Shimon Zo Vazo be'agba, that both a behema gasa and a behema daka are acquired by picking it up. Maskefler Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asks the kasha, I don't understand. How are you going to acquire an elephant? According to Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says you have to pick it up. How are you going to pick up an elephant? So Omar le'Abayis, Abayis says to Reb Yosef, b'chalifin. There's always good old chalifin. The Shimon, the owner of the elephant. So Reuven gives a pen to Shimon. Shimon picks up the pen, and now Reuven gets the elephant. Inami b'soches mekomo, or else, Reuven can rent out the land on which the elephant is standing. And then, as we're going to learn on tomorrow's daf, and as we've seen before, by purchasing the land or even renting the land, then anything on the land will belong to Reuven, and including the elephant. Reb Zera Amar says, Reb Zera, how you could pick. So Reb Zera says, maybe Arba Kalim, you could take 4 vessels, Umanichan. Right, Reuven could take 4 vessels, Umanichan Tachas Raglav, and put it underneath the legs of the elephant. And basically, right, meaning if you put something into your own, if you, I don't know, if you have like a box and you put epis in your box, then you're konit. So here also, if you're putting the elephant on your vessels and standing on your vessels, then you'll be konish. Masmina kelev shelokech b'shus mocher konu lokech. So is that to imply that the vessels of a purchaser in the domain of the seller works, right? So if I go into a store and I take something and I put it into my bag, it's now mine, but I'm not in my own domain. I can't go into somebody else's domain, put something into my vessel, and now all of a sudden it belongs to me. So Achav Ma'iskin, and here we're talking about Besimta. Well, this wasn't in Shimon's domain, nor was it in Rosh Hashanah. It was like kind of in an area off the side of Rosh Hashanah, and that's why this can work. Alternatively, you can have the elephant stand on a pile of like branches and stuff, and if he's standing 3 tfachim off the ground, if the branches, I guess the pile is 3 tfachim off the ground, so it would be some kind of a hakbah, because you would be getting lifted off the ground by 3 feet. I don't really understand that one. Because if it's 3 tfachim off the ground, then it's not loved anymore, but I guess the branches are considered separate from the ground? I don't know. But then that would be considered a hakbah. Interesting. Alright, fine. Friends, that was daf Chafei, Masechta Kiddushin. Basically, we spent a lot of the daf trying to figure out if an Eved gets castrated, does he go free? And then we talked about how to be Kona Behema Gasa. Right? The Behema Gasa, Behema Daka, the Tanakama says Behema Gasa is B'Mesira, Behema Daka is Hagbah, and the Chacham say with Meshicha by Behema Daka. And then we saw another brayso where the Chacham say that both Behema Gasa and Behema Daka are b'meshicha. Reb Shimon said both of them are b'hagbah, which was an interesting assertion. Friends, that was daf Chafei of Masechta Kiddushin. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.